Hi, I'm Heather. I'm hoping this is working. This is my third time using this new software to go live using my laptop and my phone. So anyway, I think it's working. I'm just going to go along as if it is. So I'm from Upcycled Vintage Art, and I'm starting a new routine of painting live on Wednesdays and Fridays because I've got a lot of work and I can't always share fancy reels and videos, and I thought this is a nice way of you being able to pop in and see what I'm working on over my shoulder without the pressure of me having to make them a bit more polished. So so Wednesday I was working on some studies of Ewoks for new upcycled painting I'm working on, and today I'm going to do some studies of Ents for a series of paintings inspired by the Ent wives. And so anyway, that's what I'm going to work on today. I'm going to get to it. My folks are here today helping me with some prints and getting some new framed prints up on the website for those who like to collect the prints already framed in old frames. So they're helping me downstairs with that. So I won't spend a long time today. I'm going to do some drawing more than painting. So I'm just going to put my I'm just going to make my face smaller. You don't need to see that. There we go. And push this up the top so I'm a little bit out of the way. And so this is a vintage scrapbook that I collected, and it's got lovely smooth pages in it. And I've started collecting in it some of the studies and notes that I've been making on the lost Ent wives and the Ents. So you may have seen earlier in the week I shared the drawing some studies of Treebeard, and as he's walking and telling Merry and Pippin, who are in the branches, about the Ent wives, and then he recites them a poem and they fall promptly asleep. So it's one of my favorite moments from the movies, and it kind of is the one that got me thinking. It's 25 years ago now, like just thinking a bit more about the Ent wives and wondering what happened to them and curious about them. So and I just did a watercolor study earlier in this week inspired by a photographer who captured this beautiful tree that looked like a bit like an Ent. So anyway, I'm working my way through doing more sketches and studies. But today I'd like to work on in pencil again, because I'd like to get into doing some watercolors of my of the Ents and Ent wives in these paintings. And I'm at that stage where I just need to practice some of the tricky things so I can be thinking about that I'm wanting to put in the painting. So but before I do, I'll give you another sneak peek of something that's on my desk. We had a snow day yesterday, and I almost finished this Citadel model of Treebeard, and with Merry and Pippin in his shoulders. And I've seen this online, and I've actually painted from this before as reference. And I was wanting to get a really nice Treebeard model. The Weta Workshop one is gorgeous, the humongous one, but I can't really justify that. So, but I saw this, I thought this would be fun to make. So, I've been filming this. I'm going to share the process of this over at my other profile, the Ent Wives Club. But anyway, but I thought you'd like to have a sneak peek. So I was just added one of his limbs on today. But look at the detail in this, like all the leaves and the gorgeous detail. And so I just got one arm and his head to glue on, but I mean, it's just so beautiful. Okay, let's see how sharp I can get this. He's got a snail in his beard and everything. So anyway, this is the other thing that I'm working on at the moment. Just as a bit of fun. I heard someone say once that when you do creative work as your work, it's really important to have breaks from it, so you kind of don't get stuck. Hello, how are you going? I'm live on here at the moment, so just Ben popping in to say hi. But I heard an interesting phrase that I kind of liked it. They said you got to feed your creativity and do things that inspire you. And I'm not a 3D artist in any way, but I do like to build things and paint things that are already, like, it's just going to be fun to paint this and enjoy the sculpt that someone else has done and paint it with my own flair to it. But anyway, it's a bit of fun. It was really enjoyable, and it makes me feel inspired for to do with the paintings that I'm going to be working on. So anyway, back to what I'm actually working on right now. I'm just going to grab my iPad. So I am working on Ents and Ent wives and Entings or Entlings. You have to tell me which one you like better. Tolkien uses the word says entings, but I've heard people refer to it as entlings, which I kind of like too, because it kind of sounds like something small. But so I'm wanting to explore that idea of like the ent family life and what they were like. And so in doing so, I wanted to capture some of those moments. And I love the idea of, you know, toddlers running to their parents and embracing and walking together and things in the woods. So I collected a lot of reference material, which I'm going to draw and transform into ents as I'm working. So this is going to be a quick study. I'm disciplining myself just to do a little bit because I do have other work to do today too. So this is going to be a short one, but sometimes these short, quick practices are kind of like the equivalent of going to the gym and just doing a 15-minute workout. So it's just something to kind of get the ideas flowing, and yeah, it's part of warming up and getting ready to paint. So let's see, I'm going to bring this in closer so you can see it a bit better, and I'll try and remember to move this as I'm going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my paint bucket away from my laptop. Sorry. There we go. I can see my reference. So I've got to, let's see, I'm just going to get started and not think about it too much. So I've got, obviously these are people, these are not ents. And, but it's getting me thinking about the structure and how would somebody, what would it be like between ents and their entlings and their parents. And so drawing some normal people doing the same thing kind of helps you think about it, the movement. And and I'm absolutely not worrying about whether this is perfect or not. I'm just thinking about the shapes, where the limbs are going, and how they're interacting with each other, the size and the yeah, just kind of getting the movement and the structure down, so then I can play with it afterwards and turn them a bit more entish. Sorry, I'm realizing I'm not moving this as I'm going. So as you can see, these are super quick. They're not meant to be super detailed. They're not meant to be really refined. They're just meant to give a feeling, because in these little studies is usually where I find the moment that I want to capture in the finished art. So slide it down. So this is a drawing technique that I learned a while ago, where when I studied at Capilano College before it became Capilano University. I still like to complain about that. Turned into a degree program as soon as I graduated, which is kind of annoying. It doesn't really matter when you're in illustration design. People more look at your work than where you went to school and all that. But hits my pride a little bit. But anyway, I went to Cap College, and we did life drawing every single week. And when we did life drawing, they basically forced us to draw differently than we naturally would. So we all kind of, you're kind of in your early 20s and you think you're pretty good at drawing and stuff, but then they're like, no, you've got some skill, but we're going to basically re-teach you how to draw. So I basically had everything, the way that I drew with thought was completely broken down, and life drawing class was a big part of that, and the older instructors who taught us how to look and how to see and how to put line work on the paper just kind of basically just shaped and molded us into different artists. We're kind of took what we had and gave us new tools, and so part of it is the drawing techniques, and one of them was basically just not lifting your pencil off the paper, because it just and moving quickly, painting and drawing quickly. Like we'd have life drawing sessions where we'd only get 2 minutes with the model, and then she would change or he would change to a different pose, and that's all we would have. That's all the time that we would have, and that was it. And so then you'd move on. So you'd only get a little bit of time to just get the essence of something down before you had to stop and work on something else. And so this technique of just not lifting your pencil off the paper was kind of part of that. It just, it was part of just capturing the essence of something, looking at it really quickly, looking at the most important bits and not getting distracted by even whether it looks right or not, just kind of moving your pencil on, not lifting off the page, and just keeping going until you've had it just to keep going basically, and not get caught up with things being perfect. So there we go. So we just spent a few minutes. I've done 6 studies, and with the structure, body structure of just parents and children embracing each other, walking with each other, and just the feeling of what I'm kind of hoping to capture in some of my upcoming paintings. So with this, I'm going to have a little bit of fun now, making them a little bit tree-ish. So I'm just going to look at my reference for just a second, because I've got a couple. I just want to see a tree. I want to be able to look at a tree while I'm doing this. I'll just pull up a picture of Treebeard. There we go. Okay, so I imagine that, you know, they don't have hair, but they have little. Actually, they wouldn't be as big as that. I imagine the kids would be much smaller, right? And I imagine they'd match their parents. So we have our sticky limbs. And the entlings would look probably a little bit like their parents, wouldn't they? Actually, I'm going to pull the reference up, because then I'm kind of looking, I'm not totally making it up. I'm looking at where things would be again and just reminding myself that this is an elbow, so it should look this way or that way. And I'm just adding some extra branches and twigs on the back just to kind of have a bit of a play, because I imagine they'd be a little bit camouflaged and be able to blend in with their surroundings. Look at this little guy, little tiny feet, but they would be kind of empty feet with like little twigs coming off of them, maybe something like that, kicking up some leaves as he's going. And then you've got the ant dad here, who might have some bigger branches coming off the back, maybe like Treebeard, he'll have a couple stumpy ones on his face. And so again, I'm just gonna give myself permission to work in silhouettes here, because I don't want to have to worry about contour and shading and getting everything in the right spots. I just want to play a little bit with this. So the idea, dad ant is going to be a lot bigger. Now, Tolkien didn't really talk a lot about, you know, the ants and antwives a lot, aside from what their responsibilities were in Middle Earth and how they cared for the trees and the forest. So they were created to protect the forest, because I believe it's Yavanna. I'm really terrible with names. I always look it up before I say something, but I'm gonna take the risk to look silly and not worry about it. But who created the forests and all the creatures, the plants, everything in it, was aware whence the dwarves and men and elves were awoken, that they would be wanting to use the resources in the woods and the forests, and there was no one to protect them. And so she pleaded that she could have someone to protect, like just to look out for the forest, but like the trees just stand there. There's no one there to look out for them or anything. So wondering if what to be done about that. So the Ents were created. Their whole purpose was to protect the forest and the creatures in it. And at the time, the forests of Middle Earth covered Middle Earth from edge to edge. And I love the quote of Elrond saying that there was a time when a squirrel could run from tree to tree and never touch the ground from one edge of Middle Earth to the other, which I thought was really cool. So, oops, I've gone and done this one backwards. This is where you don't do your reference and then you kind of forget what you're doing. And I don't usually erase, but I am going to, because I just want to do the back of the head on this one. So I've kind of defaulted here to doing trees that are deciduous with these sorts of leaves. I was not planning to do them all that way, but at the moment, again, I'm just concentrating on their bodies and their structures and not really worrying about getting everything right. As I'm going, I might be like, maybe I'll try a pine tree ant or some different kinds, but at the moment, it's nice to kind of just not worry about it for this study and sketch. Anyway, ants were put on Middle Earth to protect the trees and the forest, and it used to cover the entire Middle Earth. And over time, as the dominion of men and elves and dwarves grew, the ants realm got smaller and smaller until what we know in the stories, and when Frodo and the Fellowship and all that, their adventure takes place. By that point, the ants are mainly living in they're in Fangorn Forest, and there's I can make some little rooty toes on the end of his feet here. Yeah, and the ant wives have been gone for millennia, and the ants kind of don't even, they've lost them. They don't know where they are, and they wonder where they can find them, and or they could never find them. So it's towards the end of their time, but Tolkien didn't go into a lot of detail about their life and what they would have been like. Like, would they have been family oriented? Like, would they have, Treebeard said that the ants, there have been no entings for terrible long kind of years because they lost the ant wives. So there were entings at some point. There were children, and it made me think about the purpose of the ants to care for the forest. Like, that would not have stopped. So like, and just thinking about roles in the family, like there would have been parents that stayed at home to take care of the kids. This is in the era that Tolkien was in. Like, it was that usually fell to women, and in particular during the war, women were at home and picked up the mantle, like picked up all the responsibility, independence, and taking care of the family beyond just nurturing and caring for their children. They took care of the industries, like they picked up the slack and kept the country running, where the men had to go and fight, and that was Tolkien's reality at the time. And so I kind of feel like I just feel like that's how it would have been when he wrote it. So I'm gonna lean into that kind of more traditional view on their roles, and so I think that the ant wives would have been, once the antlings started to appear, would have been taking care of their children, and while the ants themselves would be off caring for the forest and the larger creatures. And because as Tolkien said, the ants loved talking with the trees and teaching them to talk, just as they were taught to talk by the elves. And they the ants carried on doing this. So then once their realm was smaller and smaller, and the ant wives were used to, once the war was with Sauron was done. Oh no, actually this is before them. They had times of peace, but their land was shrinking, so they didn't have as much room. And the ant wives were very well known for being excellent at their horticulture and cultivating crops and providing nourishment for their entlings and for the forest and others around them. But they started to look to these cleared fields, and kind of were like, ooh, what could we do with those? Like kind of like the entings or entlings had grown and no longer needed to be cared for quite so much, and then the ant wives needed their purpose too, and with not as much space and all that stuff, it made sense that they were like, well, why don't we go and help? They actually went and helped and grew beautiful gardens and provided for those around, and taught the men and the elves practices in horticulture, and which is kind of incredible, really. Their influence on all of Middle Earth, and but I mean, these are creatures, these are beings that live for millennia. So I mean, they but the Ents still wanted to take care of the forest. So the Ents stayed back and wandered and took care of the forest and enjoyed chatting with the trees. And the Ent wives went on to create the gardens and yeah, they kind of went their own ways, but they still wanted to see each other and connect with each other. So they oh, I like this shape. They would visit each other back and forth. The Ents would come and see them and want to see their Ent wives again and spend time with them and cross the river Anduin and spend time with their Ent wives, and then they'd go back to the forest again. So this back and forth happened for a very long time, until one day Treebeard said he went back. He had the feeling of wanting to see his wife Fimberthil again, and she was nowhere to be found. And the lands where the beautiful gardens that the Entwives lived in had been scorched and burned, and there was no trace of them. And it's good to remember that, like, they weren't popping back and forth like every week. Like, these are old creatures, so they may have been years without seeing each other before this happened, and so it's not like they went and the ground is still smoldering like it could have just been. Happened quite a long time ago. So they tried to pick up the trail of the Entwives to find out what had happened to them, and nobody knew. And there's rumors of where they had gone, and Tolkien hints at it and talks about it because it kind of captured so many people's imaginations, and Tolkien's lovely. He likes to encourage people's imagination, so he'd kind of give a vague answer. Sometimes he wrote specifically in letters and said, "I'm pretty sure this is what happened to them." Yeah, he didn't go into, aside from, we kind of have a pretty good idea of what happened, which I won't go into right now because it's a little sad. But we don't know much about what they were like back then. So I'm kind of taking a bit of liberty here to assume that there would have been, like, because of what he did say about them, over the years, they wanted different things, or their focus became different, and I think that could have been partly due to, I think it reflected a little bit on what life was like in England at the time during the war. So they would after the war, the men came back and the women still wanted to keep their independence. They wanted the joy of working, and still loved their families, still wanted to care and provide and do those things too. But sometimes things change, relationships change, things grow and change. So it's interesting how it kind of reflects that a little bit with the Ents wanting different things, but they still wanted to be together, at times and stuff. So yeah. So as I'm going here, you can see there's sometimes I overwork an area and color it in dark and just kind of go with a silhouette. But I'm enjoying, as I'm doing this, finding some movement in these trees and deciding how I'm gonna how I want to approach these Ents and Entings. So it's probably good to mention too that Tolkien does describe a lot how the Ents, Treebeard writes, says in the story about how the Ents, so they had like this brown tree-like skin. He didn't say they were trees. He said they had tree-like skin, and they were very tall. And I imagine that they would have continued to grow. Maybe they weren't always a set size. Maybe they started off smaller the beginning and grew over time and grew grander and grander and into more established trees. But Tolkien did write that some of the Ents became more tree-like. I mean, they stood still too long, started to forget who they were, and so they became more tree-like. And others who had taught, some trees started to become more Entish, discovering that they learning how to speak, perhaps even moving, which is kind of cool. So but we don't really know what they were totally like. So it's fun to imagine. So, but with these, because Tolkien said that their skin was bark-like, but not actually like bark. I don't feel like these need to look completely, entirely like full-on trees. I think when we get to the Two Towers and the Fellowship, they're like, is it 3,000 years old by that point? They're old. So I think they were becoming more tree-ish. Like Treebeard talks about this in the book, like kind of lamenting that there's so few of them available, like around and left remaining anymore. Some of them had become so tree-like that they could have barely moved. So I think that they all were becoming more tree-like because their lands were smaller. They didn't have, as much space. They didn't have as much responsibility. So they were becoming more tree-like and forgetting in a way what it was like to be an Ent, and which is kind of what was lovely about that moment when Treebeard Treebeard wasn't very happy with Sauron in the books. In the film, they make it like he had to see it, but he was already on the. Sauron was already in his bad books at that point. The film just kind of shows it a bit more of a relatable, poetic way. But anyway, so I'm imagining that when they were young, that when they were new, and when they were early on in Middle Earth, and maybe the Entings were still around, and they all lived in the same forest together, that perhaps they were smaller, perhaps they were a little bit more, they were humanoid, but maybe they were more so. So I'm kind of not worrying about reducing these away from being people quite so much, because, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it because, I like that shape. Because I'm painting something from the past, not something that's already happened. So I'm imagining there might be a little bit of an in-between transition there between them. So I was enjoying painting a picture of an actual tree this week. Just a beautiful, beautiful, wise-looking tree. The colors and textures and everything were wonderful. So what I love about trees is that they're just always so like, they've got unexpected pieces, and that's what I'm hoping, that's what I'm enjoying about drawing these in here, is I'm just wanting to add some unexpected moments into these Ents, and this one, the other ones were all Ents because I was drawing pictures from men, and this one is an Ent wife that I'm drawing from. Now, this is my little complaint. I was looking up some art of Ent wives and quite enjoying like seeing some of the creations are just beautiful, and I just really enjoying them. I'm not a real fan of super womanly looking, like, I don't really want a supermodel Ent wife. I don't want them to look like supermodels. I would like them to look like trees, or a bit more wizened, or a bit more, yeah. And there's a few that I've been seeing that I was really disappointed. I was looking, and then suddenly these AI ones started coming up because I was looking for Ent wives. They were generating them and making something. Like, I saw one, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I'm like, ugh. So AI has grabbed an Art Nouveau style and grabbed people's, their versions of things. And yeah, basically just made a version, and I'm like, trying not to have seen it. But I also didn't really like them because I think as soon as you type in women, they want to make them busty and curvy and all these things. And I just think, why do they have to be like that? I loved in Rings of Power, the Ent wife, who just a little bit of nod to femininity with her beautiful little blossoms and stuff. And I think there is a place for that. I don't think the Ent wives would look kind of androgynous. But I don't feel like some of them are I'm like, come on, they don't need to look like that. So I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I would like them to have as much character and charm as the Ent counterparts. while not hitting you over the head with supermodel Ents and wives. So I'm guessing, I think you know what I'm getting at here. So this, oops, I'm just going to darken this because I've accidentally shaded it in a way that it starts to look like a smile, and I don't want it to be a smile. So so I like that play of the branches being a little bit like hair, a little bit like coming out. But I think because they were in the forest, they would have had a little bit of camouflage. And apparently the Ents looked a little bit like the trees that they herded. So, which I think is kind of cool. This one I'm going to have a little kind of cute curly, just a single branch on the top of the head for this little entling. Because I think it'd be cute. A little bit of a nod to children's books, Dr. Seuss, and a little bit of a Cindy Lou Who vibe to that one, but I think that's okay. She's just a little girl, just a little entling. Not going to worry about the bark, the texture of this. I'm just wanting to play with the shape a little bit. So this little crisscross leg as she's walking with her ma. Little roots coming out the bottom of her feet. Kicking up some leaves in their path. Well, I think that's good. There we go. So that was a half hour quick drawing session just to kind of get some ideas out. And this has been going through my head. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, and yeah, I'm really happy with how this is going. So like with doing sketches like these, I kind of get the cobwebs out, explore some ideas, and find little moments that I'm really happy with. Like this first one. The first ones are always a little bit more stiff, not quite as good, you know. There's little moments and I'm like, okay, I like how the ankle's coming up here and the gap that goes in here, but I've lost it a little bit in here. So, but I'm not going to worry about that because it's just a study, and I like the kind of the pose, and I like this one more. I like the dynamicness of him kind of facing and the kid running and the little ent running towards the ent. This one here is much better. Like it captures a lot more movement. It's just basically just captures that excitement of being happy to see someone. So, and I think with the Ents going in the forest for long patches of time, and the Entings being at home with the Entwives, which I'm going to assume that that's what happened, because who would leave little Entlings by themselves? I assume that that's what would happen. So I think they'd be happy to see their fathers when they came home. And I love, what I like about this one is I love the movement too, but I liked the feeling of like the branches maybe being down a little bit, mimicking hair a little bit more. I like the casualness of this pose. I feel like this moment would be nice to kind of work into the art somewhere, because they're on their way to somewhere and I'm not sure what they're going to be doing. And I quite like this one being, it's funny, I catch sight of something and I think, oh, I want to fix that a little bit. Bring that up. Messing it up. I'm going to leave it. I've got to stop working. But I like the looking at each other, and I like the idea of maybe some of the Entlings having less foliage, less branches, because they're just starting out. They're just they wouldn't have that much yet. So yeah, so that's it. That's it for today. So I'm going to pick this up again. So I always start with these sorts of sketches and studies, and then I might do some little painted ones. But I think this is pretty close to. Often I would just get just this far, and then I would launch into the finished one with something like this, because I feel excited about it and feel like I know where it's going now. So if anything, I would probably just get some more tree reference, so I can have some really nice branches and leaves to use as reference, so that they'll be more realistic. These will be more realistic if I have some details in there that are actually real. So anyway, thanks for following along. I'll be sharing more of this soon, and yep. So I'm working my way towards a March art drop, and don't hold me to it. That's my goal. I'm working on a lot of Middle Earth pieces for then. And if my next live is on Wednesday, I will either be working on Middle Earth or more Ents drawings, and I've just ordered, like I've ordered this one here, little sneaky thing. I've ordered a Nazgul one too, so I'm really excited about that. Anyway, next Wednesday I'll be doing this again, so I'm gonna leave this there. Stop rambling. Thank you very much for following along and joining in today, and yeah, have a good weekend. Bye.